Good morning. You join us as the final minutes start to tick away before the beginning of practice here in Monza. The teams are working furiously on the cars, making last-minute adjustments before they get out on track. One of the most famous corners here at Monza is the Variante del Rettifiglio, the first corner chicane. It's been the scene of so many first-lap incidents over the years, and I think the teams will be holding their breath, hoping that they make it through that corner cleanly at the start today.
This is such a tricky corner to find the right braking point for. You approach it around 220 miles per hour down the main straight, then scrub off 170 miles per hour in just over 100 meters. It's very easy, therefore, to overshoot and end up driving through the escape road.
Super job so far, we're getting great data. Stay focused. laps of fuel remaining. Okay, super job so far. We're getting great data. Stay focused. We're seeing mine.
Quick look at the classification at the end of the session then. Here are your top three: a McLaren, Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen. That concludes an interesting practice session. Let's hope...
Hi, how are you? I'm just passing on your qualifying goals for this weekend.
Qualifying is about to start here at the Autodromo di Monza for the Italian Grand Prix. The teams are about to head out onto the track any minute now. I want to talk briefly about the strategy in these qualifying sessions. Anthony Davidson, how can a driver adjust their approach to gain those critical extra tenths of a second?
Well, qualifying isn't about adjusting your approach necessarily, it's more about trying to repeat a low fuel run that you've practiced prior to this session. You're looking for perfection on the lap, and that's hard to achieve if you're trying something new. There are some variables that can stand in your way, however. Track position or unexpected yellow flags, for example. Coupled with ever-changing track conditions, it's important to be out there at the right moment. But as a driver, you have to try and ignore these distractions and just keep your mind focused on that one perfect lap.
So qualifying is complete and we're all set for an exciting race tomorrow. Your top three are a McLaren, Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. The grid is set then, so that just leaves the race itself. Join us tomorrow where we'll be live with all the action. And until then, it's goodbye.
Hello. I just wanted to pass on the team's expectations for this race. Good luck.
The Italians love their cars and they love their racing. And of course, they love it here at Monza. Home race for Ferrari, of course, who've had 18 wins here since 1950. But you know, there's not been so much luck for the locals in the cockpit recently. The last Italian driver to win this race was back in 1966. So what now? I think it's time to make some more history here today. With top speeds in excess of 220 miles per hour, few places can hope to touch Monza's crown as the fastest circuit in Formula One. Hard braking zones going into 3 chicanes make up the majority of the 11 corners on this 3.6-mile circuit. And just in case the slipstream wasn't enough, well, 2 DRS zones will help encourage some close action. It's a very tight turn 1 here and a very big braking zone. It's a corner, Anthony Davidson, where we've seen a number of lap 1 incidents in the past.
As you say, it's a very small piece of track when you have more than just one car trying to go through it. The actual run down towards the chicane is quite wide, so off the start, we'll often see drivers running 2 or maybe 3 abreast as they come up towards the braking zone. Everyone wants to brake late, of course, to win track position, and that tends to be where we see a lot of contact. And you'll see the more experienced drivers kind of hang back a little into here and focus more on picking up the pieces from other people's incidents.
Well then, after an exciting qualifying session yesterday, let's take a look at how the cars line up. It's McLaren in pole position then, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Bottas, Vettel, Kimi Raikkonen and Perez, Ricciardo, Alonso, Verstappen and Felipe Massa, Grosjean, Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon and Sainz, Palmer, Kvyat, Kevin Magnussen and Lance Stroll, Wehrlein and Marcus Ericsson rounds off the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track.
It's a long run to turn 1. Be careful with diving in as it's going to get very tight very quickly. Good luck. Just a reminder, we are critical on fuel, probably a lap or so short. We don't need to risk a DNF chasing records, so think about going down to mix 1 and lifting early into the corners. Release. That was our last stop. No more scheduled pit stops. So the gap to our teammate is 3.1 seconds. Fernando has come into the pits. fastest lap of the race so far. Nice work, that's P1. Race win, well done.
So, another fantastic victory for McLaren today. Anthony, what do you think made the difference here?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
Our drivers are making their way out for the podium celebrations, and it's going to be McLaren picking up the winner's trophy. Congratulations to the entire team for that fantastic performance. So then, it's time to see how this result affects the Drivers' Championship. It's a good result for Lewis Hamilton, who moves further ahead at the top of the table. And now I'd like to ask you, Anthony Davidson, who was your driver of the day?
Difficult call, but I'd like to say Esteban Ocon. He's just so gifted at getting the most out of his tyres, and he showed that today.
On to the constructors then. Mercedes have extended their lead at the top of the standings. It was great having you with us for this weekend. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Until next time though, goodbye. Here come our winning drivers then, out onto the podium at the end of...
Hey, good to see you again. The factory sent over the parts that were looking good on the rig. They're being fitted as we speak. Have a look at the report.